Hello, my name's Ella, and I'm a junior this year at FAU, and I am a communications major, and I've always been super interested in human behavior. With that being said, the theory that I've chosen to explore is the expectations violations theory. And I find this theory particularly interesting because it's more unique to each person and their interpretations of their own relationships. Now, essentially, the expectancy violation theory is based on who we anticipate to come into certain spaces based on our relationship with them and the context. So the theory highlights 3 different personal spaces or zones, starting with personal space, which is typically within an arm's length away or 4 feet or closer. This is usually the space that is more intimate with friend, family members, somebody you see on a regular basis or have an intimate relationship with. Next, we have social spaces, which are between 4 and 12 feet away. These are more casual, but not exactly intimate, maybe what you would see with like a coworker. And lastly, we have our last zone, which is considered public space, which is 12 or more feet away. It's typically more formal and more guarded, which is what you would see with like a stranger. Now, these violations occur when we have a negative assessment of someone else's unexpected behavior. And these negative assessments are determined by our threat threshold, which is the distance at which we feel uncomfortable with someone else's presence. For example, the threat threshold you have with your mom or dad would be different than the threat threshold you have with a stranger in a grocery store. Now, one thing about the expectancy violation theory that I think is important to note is that violations that don't align with previous behavior patterns in the relationship typically cause a higher level of violation. So what that means is that the relational dynamic might shift and look different after the violation occurs. One form of media that I found the expectancy violation theory to be showcased is in the show Dance Moms, specifically Season 2, Episode 16. For some background, before I show the clip, the TV show Dance Moms is a reality TV show that centers on a dance team from Pittsburgh and follows that team as it competes around the country. The dance teacher, Abby Lee Miller, is more known for her different style of teaching and the conflicts that creates with the mothers.
It's all done.
You're just doing it now? Didn't you take that home last night? Told her to take the chair. As soon as the chair came into the room and I touched it, and I saw that my hands were black with marker, I knew right then and there her mother, Kelly, left the chair in the studio. Dingbat.
Oh, look, she's looking to see if it's...
Where are the stoppers? I wanted these rubber stoppers.
I'll have them for the competition.
No stoppers. I mean, really? This is important, Kelly. Do something. Done.
You, Abby.
You don't need them for the competition. I told you to do it for today. Now, look at that language. Doesn't that embarrass you? That she has to use language like that? That's what a truck driver uses.
Why would she do that to Paige?
You're finished. Next. Who's solo?
So after watching that clip, we can see that Abby, the dance teacher, violates the student, Paige's, threat threshold and expectations by throwing the chair. And this is evident as Paige leaves the room crying. One of the first things that I noticed when watching this clip is the zoning or spacing between Abby and Paige. The two are rather close to each other, definitely within 4 feet, which would be considered personal space or a more intimate zone. The spacing itself is not the violation, but it's the act of Abby throwing the chair while she's in this personal, intimate space. Abby throwing this chair was clearly out of her usual pattern of behavior while with Paige, which created the expectancy violation. Another thing that I think is important to take note of while watching this clip is the clear power dynamic between Abby and Paige, not only in the student-teacher relationship, but also the adult-child relationship, as Paige is clearly young in this clip, and Abby was upset with something Paige's mother did. Since Abby was upset with something Paige's mother did, it would be reasonable for a child like Paige to expect that an adult like Abby would step out of the room and go discuss that with her mother. Since that didn't happen as Paige most likely expected, this created a higher violation. Abby's act of throwing the chair while in her personal space resulted in a higher violation. Now, this leads us to another key part in the expectancy violation theory, which is how people expect future reactions and interactions to unfold. Since Paige leaves the room crying, it's clear that she's experiencing different negative emotions, such as fear and withdrawals from her relationship with Abby. We can also unfortunately see this impact in later episodes of the show, where Paige experiences panic attacks when being in the same room with Abby. Now, this demonstrates how expectancy violations shift relational dynamics and future expectations. Overall, we can now see how the expectancy violations theory is in fact incorporated into our lives, whether or not we realize it.